Hello, everyone. My name is Alexa Dornigan, and I am a content director at Commerce Next. On behalf of the entire Commerce Next team, welcome to today's webinar. It's Wednesday, September 24th, 2025, and we have a very special webinar for you. This is our Startup Spotlight Innovators Transforming Retail and E-commerce webinar, and it's a brand new format that we're trying for the first time. We're excited to see what you all think. Our speakers are Arthur Pentecoste, co-founder and CEO of Zenyt, Michael Bervell, co-founder and CEO of TestParty, RJ Talyor, CEO of Backstroke, and our wonderful host is Noam Paransky, board member of ThredUp and Commerce Next advisor. Thank you to Zenyt, TestParty, and Backstroke for sponsoring today's webinar. We can't bring these webinars to you without the support of our sponsor partners. A huge thank you to our Commerce Next staffers, Jenny, Alan, Corey, Robert, Scott, and Veronica, who are all off screen helping to make this webinar a success. And last but not least, thanks to you, our audience, for being with us today. As I mentioned earlier, this is the first time that we're hosting a Startup Spotlight webinar. So I want to take a moment to walk you through how it will go. In just a few minutes, I'm going to introduce Noam, today's host, who will kick things off for us. You'll then hear from Arthur from Zenyt, Michael from TestParty, and RJ from Backstroke. Each of them will present their startup solutions along with one real-world case study that demonstrates their tech in action. After each presentation will be a couple of minutes for audience Q&A, so don't be shy and send in your questions in real time. Then, after all presentations and Q&A are complete, we'll have all three executives join Noam for a panel discussion. We'll take breaks throughout the discussion to answer audience questions, so feel free to send those in as you think of them. So that's today's format. Before we get started, we have a few important announcements. I'm thrilled to share more about the newest event from Commerce Next, the Post-Purchase Forum, taking place in just a few weeks on Wednesday, October 15th at Tapestry's headquarters in NYC. This is a one-day event where we'll cover the full post-purchase experience, everything from e-commerce, customer service, customer experience and loyalty, all the way to returns and fulfillment. We have a fantastic speaker lineup, including keynotes with Chewy and Mattress Firm. If you're a director or VP, this event is for you. We already have attendees from PepsiCo, L'Oreal, Macy's, Sol de Janeiro, and many more. It's a small, off-the-record event with only 150 spots, so make sure to apply now with the link in our chat. If you missed any past sessions or want to brush up on any topic, our YouTube channel is a wealth of information. We have more than 500 videos available covering digital commerce. Go to youtube.com/commercenext to see our entire video archive. Don't worry about missing anything. We are recording this webinar and we'll make it available by tomorrow. Let's take a moment to show you where things are on your screen. Main panel for interactivity is on the right. Chat is where you can engage with other attendees or give a shout out to our speakers. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the Q&A tab. We love questions and want the audience to be an active part of this webinar. Plus, the Q&A tab gives us extra functionality like the ability to upvote questions so we know what's most important. And finally, you have the handouts. In this section, you'll be able to download all presentation slides from today, as well as handouts from Zenyt and TestParty. If you're watching the replay, you can find the handouts in the bottom of your player. And now, please welcome Noam Paransky, board member at ThredUp, Commerce Next advisor, and host of today's webinar. Noam, take it away.
Hi, I'm thrilled to be the host for today's event. Thanks for joining us. As Alexa said, we have three great companies presenting today, 5-minute presentation, 2-minute Q&A, and then conversation. If you ask great questions, you will be rewarded by those questions being asked and discussed. If you don't, you'll be punished by me asking much less good questions. With that, let's go to our first presenter, Arthur from Zenyt.
Hey, Noam. Hey, everyone. All right. So today, I'll show you how e-commerce has recently shifted, opening a new growth lever for leaders like you. And we'll start with a real example. This is a product page from a brand I love, Hermes. It looks great, right? Yet, it's hiding a revenue killer. Can you spot the issue? It's not obvious, right? It's actually in the description. It claims that the product fits a tablet inside. So I went ahead and bought the product. And in reality, it can barely fit a phone. So this one copy-paste error is frustrating shoppers and wiping out thousands in sales. And finding this one error on one page was hard already. So finding it across an entire catalog is impossible. And so that's why when e-commerce leaders thought about their growth levers, they thought of ads, CRO, SEO, new products, content, email, and so on. But one lever was often ignored: improving data and user experience. Not because it did not matter, but because in the old ways of working, it was manual, repetitive, and exploding in complexity. If you have 100 SKUs across devices, multiple locals, with campaigns and seasonal updates, that's already way too many content. No team can check everything every day. So that lever stayed on the shelf. And the consequences? From our analysis of more than 50 million product pages, 10% hide a revenue-killing error. 10%. Pricing, copy, images, layout, or else. In 2025, this is no longer acceptable. If your PDP is wrong, customers will leave. They will buy on Amazon, Google, ChatGPT, or competitor site that doesn't have an error. Today, shoppers don't compromise. They won't buy if delivery takes more than a week. They won't buy if a page loads in 4 seconds or more. And they won't buy if the information on your page is wrong. This means lost revenue and frustrated customers. That was the old reality. AI unlocks a new reality. And so I'm Arthur, founder of Zenyt AI, and we help these brands grow revenue by 5 to 15% within 60 days by improving the product data and experience on your store. Zenyt puts this growth lever back into your hands with thousands of personalized AI agents that browse your store. They're smart, they can read, view, reason, understand images and data. They complete complex journeys with click, scroll, and checkout. And they identify anomalies prioritized by impact and generate ready-to-publish recommendations. So new lever means new results. Let's look at it with one of our clients, Caudalie. Caudalie is a global skincare brand with 150 SKUs. And before Zenyt, 3 issues drove performance and team's time. Product information mismatches, incorrect ingredients or claims, leading to 15% conversion loss. Miscategorized product, bestsellers tagged in the wrong place, harder to find, cutting views by 30%. Broken promotion, discount code failing just before Black Friday, costing hundreds of thousands of sales daily. With Zenyt, that story flipped. In 1 quarter, Caudalie recovered $700,000, corrected page drove a 50% lift in conversion, and team stayed hundreds of hours from manual QA. And you don't need to just take my word for it. So how did we do it? Caudalie business teams created custom AI agents on Zenyt, product information improver, category accuracy solver, promotion integrity verifier, and more. This is the product information improver live. The agent is validating titles, specs, claims, Q&A, all the details on the page. This is one of them. In parallel, hundreds of agents are covering the entire catalog. And as you'll see there, it just flagged the same SPF sunscreen error that we looked at right earlier. So Caudalie is not alone. LG Electronics, Shorty Love, Benchmade Moderns, brands of all sizes and industries already trust Zenyt. Since January, our agents helped these brands grow revenue by $55 million and freed up more than 150,000 hours from manual QA work. These brands are already revenue Zen, and yours can be next, because Zenyt is plug and play, works on all stores, and ROI fast. So with the peak season approaching, we're extending 30 complementary Zenyt AI trials to our agentic revenue accelerator just for this Commerce Next community. So either scan the QR code or email me directly if you want to chat further. If you're local, even better, stop by our Brooklyn office for coffee. Catch every sale, stay Zen, win with Zenyt. Thank you.
I don't see any questions yet. Please feed me one if there is one. But Arthur, a lot of folks on this webinar have probably invested in automated QA and observability solutions. How is your solution fundamentally different? Because most of those solutions were developed 5-10 years ago. They've continued to be evolved. You're a newer solution. It's, the hot buzzword is agentic. So what's fundamentally different about what you're doing versus a lot of those other solutions?
Yeah, that's a great question. We work regularly with brands that have tried two things. They've tried either automated QA solutions, like you mentioned, script scraping, more algorithmic types of solutions. And these don't work for them because they are not smart. They don't have the flexibility that a human brings or an AI brings. They are rigid. They're going to break every time you're going to change your store layout, and they are not going to adapt to changing conditions. The other thing that these brands have tried often is asking teams to do it directly. And this solution doesn't work because human manual activities don't scale with the volume. And so that means defects slip through, teams waste time, and customers get frustrated.
And then how did you, from a solution perspective, train your agents to look for those inconsistencies, effectively inconsistencies that matter? And then how are your customers able to do their own training around, issues that they're coming across or things that matter to their customers, and enable the agent to do those checks for them as well?
Right. So, in the early days, it started with me behind the screen with our first 10 customers, looking at how they were doing it, understanding, the nitty details of their day-to-day manual verification. And then we got hours of recordings and logs of errors that were identified and fixed. And so that was the starting point. And so that was the starting point for the solution. And then we added a personalization layer that learned from your brand right from the start, based on your own specificities, industries, best-selling products, and so on. And the third block, so there's the beginning, the first base intelligence, there is the calibration to your brand, and then there's the continuous training. We've embedded the human in the loop easy way for people to provide feedback on things that are most important for them or more or less relevant, so that the AI keeps on learning and improving. And we see great results from it.
And then I've got a question here. You answered it, but you can reinforce it. What is the integration effort? What is required to get going on a customer or pilot website?
Yeah, none. No integration required, because we access public information the same way your customers do. So we don't need to connect to your databases or complex systems. We can get started in days, just like a customer can browse your store today. And there's a few details to make sure we don't impact your analytics, but the integration is pretty fast.
Yeah, a whitelisting process, and then excluding from the analytics. Sure. And then, how do you help companies find the underlying issue? So it's one thing to catch an issue, even to catch it repeatedly, but how do you help companies define the issue upstream?
The root cause, yeah, absolutely. So the idea is we have different modules, and after we identify the consequence, that is what's going to frustrate your customers or erode sales, we have sub-modules that are going to be able to dive into the content of the page, the structure across multiple pages, the JavaScript, and the way your store is rendered, to root cause what's happening and what's leading to the issue. So recently, for example, we were able to pinpoint that there was an issue with third-party vendor, an API for currency conversion that was causing the prices updating regularly on one of our customers. And so in that case, we not only told them, hey, there's something weird with your price. That would have been helpful. But we went much further and actually told them this specific API is causing it. And that's how we suggest you fix it.
And what was the most, a new one just came in. What is the baseline data, the training data, and then how do you kind of deal with and manage hallucinations in your solution?
Yeah, I'll start almost with the last one. We tend to have very few hallucinations. When you think about it, if I gave you enough time to look at a page, you would pretty easily find the errors. It's just that it takes a lot of time. So the task itself to identify an issue is not, from a brain perspective, super hard to do. It's just that you need to be super focused for a long amount of time on thousands of pages. And so it's actually an amazing task for AI especially the AI agents at the level where they are right now, and they perform super well. So we tend to have very few, if not close to zero, hallucinations. What may happen sometimes is that an error that we may flag as something problematic may be more or less relevant or more or less of a priority for the brand. And so we have a prioritization algorithm that also learns from that feedback. And so something that one brand may want to fix today may be something that goes into the to fix later this week for another brand. And so that's why we're going to do some subtleties, but we almost never see a blatant hallucination.
Amazing. Thank you, Arthur.
Absolutely.
The next presenter is Michael with TestParty. Michael, welcome.
Hey, good to see you all. I'm calling in from Indianapolis, which I've never been to Indianapolis, but it's a great place. We love this part of the country. I'm talking today about how to drive revenue through compliance, specifically with AI-first digital accessibility. So I'll start by telling you a story of one of our earliest customers who we've been working with for over 2 years. It's a brand called Greatness Wins, started by Chris Ribinoko, or Chris Ricoboco. I mean, I've never actually said his last name out loud, so this is pretty tough. With Chris. But Chris is he's also the founder of a brand called Untuck It. And Greatness Wins is Derek Jeter's athleisure brand. A couple years ago, they got a legal complaint around digital accessibility, and this was while they were using an overlay solution. I'm sure many of you are super familiar with this. It's a super common thing in the e-commerce industry for people to get hit with digital accessibility lawsuits. And most of these lawsuits are based off of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. Even in Europe, there's now the European Accessibility Act, which requires that any website has alternative text, the right color contrast, proper text sizing, and all that sort of stuff on your e-commerce site. If we look at the stats, just in the last 7 years, we've seen the number of ADA lawsuits grow from 2,300 to close to 5,000, projected by the end of this year, and that's only growing year over year. What's interesting is that the number of lawsuits to companies using quote-unquote widgets, the same type of tool that Greatness Wins was using, has also increased. We look at this data and we see that last year, 20% of lawsuits were from widgets. And in the first 6 months of this year, 32% of these lawsuits are from widgets. And we think about this a lot and ask the question, what's happening here? Why is this going on? And what we find is that most of these suits are kind of ambulance chasers. It's law firms hiring people with disabilities to go in mass and to file a lot of these suits. And so we'll find actually that there's a few trolls that are doing most of these suits. And they're going out and finding, overlay companies that claim to get you to full compliance, that actually don't get you to full compliance. And based off of these overlays, they can find really great targets for them to file these almost troll ambulance chasing lawsuits. But this leads to real business effects, right? We see that there's 15 plaintiffs that are filing 100 or more lawsuits a year, 13 law firms. Some of them are filing up to 1,000 lawsuits over the last 5 years. And it's kind of a sad reality coming from someone working in this space from a passion project to see that this is happening in digital accessibility. So back to the story of Greatness Wins and kind of what we did with them and what the impact was. We first found them. They had 24,000 errors. Right, they were facing a $20,000+ lawsuit, and they estimated to fix it, it'd be hundreds of dev hours. Our focus as a business is what we call AI-enabled human-approved accessibility, or human-in-the-loop accessibility. We have AI tools, code tools that are built on things like Cloud Code, O1 Mini, so on and so forth, that can go into a code base and automatically fix accessibility issues. We as a team also review that and give your team the way to just merge pull requests. So we get sites to compliance within 2 weeks based off global standards. We scan daily to keep you compliant, no matter how many A/B tests you're changing or how many bots you may have running around your site. And once a month, we actually test your site to keep you compliant. We started in this industry actually selling into Fortune 1000, and we realized that e-commerce also had a deep, deep need. And in the Fortune 1000, because of such complex sites, you need to do manual testing. You can't just rely on automated tools and AI tools alone, like these overlay widgets. That's why they cause this problem. And so that offering of having not just AI, but also human, which is also a settlement requirement in a lot of these agreements, we've seen to be hugely successful. I'll show you just a quick screenshot of one of the initial audit reports that we give on a monthly basis, because there's two sides to the accessibility coin. One side is getting yourself accessible, And the second side is ensuring that you can prove that. So even if you think your site is accessible, there's a question of where's your proof. And with that proof, when we go to customers like Greatness Wins, when we partner with them, we're able to get them from 24,000 or even more issues to 0 within 2 weeks. Because they have this proof, they can go to court and they can go and settle for 90% less. And because of that, they're only spending 10 or 15 minutes a month because our team handles everything for them. So we love this team, even though I can't pronounce Chris's last name. He's been a great partner to TestParty for the last 2 years. And like him, we've partnered for almost 2 years, and beyond that, we're serving close to 30 million end users, and now monitoring actively 2 billion plus in e-commerce on an annual basis. Some of these customers on our slides you may recognize: Levain Cookies, Cozy Earth, Magic Spoon, Tushy, Durai Homes. When I made this slide last month, since then we about doubled. So we're definitely in the hyper growth stage. But obviously there's this question of, well, who are you? Like, who are you as this random guy to tell us what we should be doing for accessibility? And I end on this before I open up to Q&A. My background, I grew up thinking about digital accessibility, thinking about the intersection of philosophy and computer science and public policy. I first started within the privacy sector and worked at Google and the UN in accessibility, and then decided to build this company when we raised about $4 million last year from the Kennedy family, Urban Innovation Fund, Bain Capital Ventures, and the National Science Foundation. And now this is the dream, to build a company that we can have to protect e-commerce businesses and also at the same time make the internet more accessible. So for this community, what we have is a free accessibility audit. Just fill out this form, shoot us a note or an email at micro@testparty.ai, and we'll get you your audit so you can get a good sense of where you are from a legal and a risk perspective. But that's my 5 minutes. I'll open up to questions and see what people are thinking.
So Michael, walk us through kind of like that that audit and kind of discovery process. I've been in the seat where the lawsuit comes in and the general counsel calls and says, hey, we have a problem, we have a complaint. And then a bunch of people have to mobilize. So kind of walk us through how you capture that history, what it's like to prep that. And frankly, most of the activity, it looks like, 80% of the activity is coming from kind of the same entities, and you've been to the rodeo multiple times. So like, what does that cycle look like if I'm a head of e-commerce trying to support my legal team and trying to be compliant for my customers?
Well, I mean, the one thing that your legal team is going to want is evidence, right? Like if you want to be able to argue like, hey, actually, we're fine. The first thing is, well, how do you know that? How are you going to prove that? And so what we saw customers doing, and this is how we built our offering, is they would be going back and like trying to screenshot old versions of themes. They were trying to download themes that they had duplicated and not deleted within Shopify. Sometimes if they had an agency, they had a GitHub record, and it was really just trying to systematically go back through that record and fight all these claims. What these lawyers are doing, or some of these firms are doing, is they're scanning your website with open source tools that are built, to make the web more accessible, but they've kind of been reversed and used in a different way. And these tools might come up with 100 issues. And so to have to go back and look manually through 100 different reasons for why you're compliant, it was just adding so much work, right? So if someone said settle for 15K or spend 100 hours go proving that you're innocent, most companies, and I think most companies on this call, I'm sure, are settling, right? That's why people are spending close to $500,000 every 5 years on these sorts of settlements. In our research, that's what we're seeing. $500 million, sorry.
And then you talk about kind of the automatic fixing and updating of code, and there's a lot of kind of there are two camps. People are really excited about AI coding tools, vibe coding, and then there are kind of conversely concerns around the edits that those code bases are making and potential kind of medium and long-term impacts on stability of code base. So how do you kind of monitor that and ensure that those code fixes are both, again, supporting this ultimate goal and objective, but also maintaining the stability and the interactivity of the code base end to end?
Yeah, I mean, definitely two things that are pretty interesting here. One is something that I hear a lot from Sneak. They're like a SaaS security company that mostly sells into like Fortune 1000 enterprise. But their CEO says very frequently, because they have a similar code review tool for security, that the more AI code you have, the more AI code reviewing you're going to need, right? And so the question is, are the tools that you have to review your net new code or your net new content is that trained in the way that you want it to be trained? In Sneak's case, it's security. In our case, it's accessibility. But ultimately, the way that we approach this is kind of like human in the loop, right? It's AI first, obviously, because it helps us to get speed and reduce costs for customers. But our team is looking at every code change, and your team even as well before you merge it in would be doing the same. So, yeah, it's a fun world that we're in. Definitely on the cutting edge, I think, of what's possible with technology.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. And now on to RJ from Backstroke. RJ, welcome.
Hey, thanks everybody. I appreciate it. And I'm RJ Talyor from Backstroke. I spent bulk of my career building the email and SMS products as a part of the Salesforce Marketing Cloud. I went from there to start a company called Pattern 89 that predicted what you would click on Instagram or Facebook. And with all of the generative capabilities, we've really put those two ideas together to form Backstroke and create the future of email and SMS. And I know it's Wednesday, so I'm going to ask for some audience participation here. If you take a peek at the 6 examples in front of you, these are all emails that were generated for our customer, Lycée. Backstroke has worked with Lycée for over a year now. They're an e-com retailer and sold in 500 locations nationwide. And they have the question that every email marketer has, which is, which of these emails are going to drive the most revenue? So if you would take a guess, I'm curious which one you think of the 6 here would generate the most revenue. If you're brave, you could put your choice in the comments. If not, you can pick which one you think. I'll give you just 2 more seconds to pick which one you think. If you guessed number 2, then you'd be right. And 2 drove a 28% lift in revenue versus the control and an 18% higher click rate. And what's amazing about this is that the creative director at Lycée said, do not touch the editorial image up at the top. Make sure to just leave that alone. It's an editorial image. It represents our collection. We're not going to change anything about it, but you can have permission to do anything below the fold effectively. And so what Backstroke did is generated options based on the predictions there, and we got it right. But this is a little bit of a trick question. I know many of you guessed number 4. And if you guessed number 4, you would be right for those subscribers that were Generation Y or the baby boomers who are 65 plus. If you guessed number 1, you were right for what drives most purchases on iPhones. If you're looking at how to drive most conversions from desktop subscribers, it's number 5. And then those subscribers who are lapsed, or those people who haven't bought from you in the last 6 months, the number 6 was actually the best performer. So if you ask your creative team to create 6 different variants of an email, they'll probably give you a dirty look or worse. And what Backstroke does is generates content across 75 different variations, or even more if we're creating a custom sample for you. And we generate incremental revenue by identifying what design, creative, content, emotion, slang, emojis, even imagery or GIFs, what is the right type of content that's going to perform? And what we've done is created a platform that uses computer vision to understand all of the different attributes of your email. And every email marketer knows that they've got generally a hero, they've got the primary message and a call to action, and then maybe a product grid of some sort. And it reflects the brand as well as it's driving somebody to action. If you'd apply best practices here, you'd know that you'll probably need to make sure those first 200 pixels are best, especially for anybody who has iOS 18 or more. Or you might want to make sure those first 400 pixels are really compelling to get people to scroll below the fold. But what a lot of customers don't know is who's scrolling below the fold and how far they're going. So you might be surprised to know that desktop users get to about 800 or 900 pixels, whereas mobile subscribers go even further. And that men have different browsing behavior and women scroll even further than men on a typical email, especially on mobile. And then what people are shopping for is different. So you can split into all sorts of different demographic or behavioral elements and discover things like men like to click on images of men's products, whereas women shop for the whole family. So why are we generating the same email or applying a best practice to a single email when generative allows us to create content that is specifically performant for each individual on the list? Well, That's what we do. At Backstroke, we generate on-brand content. That's, of course, critical, as well as performant at the one-to-one level. And I started this business about 4 years ago, actually, with my wife, who has a PhD in data science. She and I, as well as our 2 other co-founders, started signing up for every email marketing program we could find to build a proprietary data set that has now millions and millions of messages in it. And we can generate content that predicts what your subscribers are going to click on, as well as convert on. And we see between 5 and 40% lift on that performance because of what everybody knows in the marketing world, which is there's an audience, and how do we honor those individual preferences? Like, what type of offer, what type of imagery? Is it lifestyle, or is it a lay flat, or something else? Should we use technical language, jargon, slang, or plain text? Which template should we use? So Backstroke generates a variant of the same content for each individual on your list, deploys it, and then learns what works. We plug right into your ESP, and Backstroke's really excited to work with brands ranging from small to mid to large enterprises. And Cozy Earth is a great example of a customer that uses Backstroke. And you can see some examples of how the old way of creating emails almost exactly matches the new way of creating emails with a generative approach with Backstroke. And that not only do the emails look great, but they were created in around 5 minutes instead of hours. And we work with all sorts of e-com retailers, all seeing lift, and Backstroke is really proud to drive more revenue, incremental revenue, to more than pay for our software. So that's a quick overview of the generative future. And one other thing I'd add is that my background is in creative. I come from the creative space, and specifically I have a master's in creative writing. So it's an interesting kind of balance to bring to this performance-driven world where performance and creative have to work together. And I think that the future of generative and the future of all this AI stuff is actually very human, with creatives having a really firm seat at the table. So quick overview for you.
Thanks, RJ. What are the first, generative? Oh, it's going to help me do all these things. Great. Oh crap. It's going to do all these things. What are the first 4 to 6 weeks look like getting off the ground with a new team leveraging a generative tool for the first time in their actual day-to-day work?
Yeah, well, there a few different things. One, we have to understand the brand guide, the campaign calendar, where the assets are stored, that type of stuff. But we can normally get a customer up and running with their first sends out of Backstroke within the first 15 days, because people really want to invest, but they want to see immediate results. That said, there is a significant amount of change management, because email marketers that I know and have known for 20 years consider themselves email marketers. They have a standard workflow that they have created and refined over the last, X years of their career. And with AI and generative, that changes. And everything from who makes the approvals on the creative choices, how those approvals get done, as well as what happens with extra time in my calendar if I'm not creating emails all the time, or uploading assets, or writing copy. What do I do? So change management is a piece of that, and it's we're still in the early days of it all. But in the first 4 to 6 weeks, you'll see campaigns out the door, revenue increase, and then change management start.
And what does implementation from a tech integration perspective look like? And do you integrate out of the box with multiple email service providers?
Yeah, today we integrate with Klaviyo and Attentive. You can integrate with any platform, so we can publish content through an HTML export with any system, or build a full integration in about 2 weeks. It's the same APIs that we can point at any system to publish. So, I'm very familiar with Salesforce Marketing Cloud, having built a part of it. But today, Klaviyo and Attentive are the easiest way to get started, but we can build with anybody.
Awesome. Great. I'm going to invite everyone back into the webinar here, and we're going to move to our panel conversation. Please keep your kind of questions and thoughts streaming in so that all of you can participate as well. So the first theme is going to be around something I'm really passionate about, which is insight to action, right? We are awash in data. We are much more hard pressed to identify the meaning of that data, and then even harder pressed to take action against that to drive business or resolve issues. And so, Michael, I'll start with you. So, can you share more about how AI and your tool are finding these issues around accessibility, like where and how it's found, and then what it looks like to surface it, and how your tool helps to resolve the issues?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's definitely multiple ways of finding issues. I don't want to like overemphasize AI because a lot of these issues can be found without AI, right? Like, does an image have the right alt text? Like, you don't need alt AI to go through and figure out if there's a caption or something. Is the color contrast ratio the right ratio? Like, that's not a super AI focused task, and that's been around for years. One of the areas that we're building AI tooling is where typically you would have to manually test a website. And in our case, that means keyboard navigability. So can you use just the keyboard and pushing tab to navigate all major parts of the site and stringing together those user flows? That's a very AI focused task. Or screen reader compatibility. So can we read a whole web page as if it was a screen reader and compare the actual visuals of the page to what's being read out? These are like examples of the AI tooling that we build, or even Zoom. Can you zoom into 500% and still use a website? Those are the three areas today that we're investing in AI tech. And kind of similar to Artur, like as long as there's a public link, we test on customer sites, we test on prospect sites all the time because we can just run on anything. It doesn't really require special access. So that's my perspective. Maybe I'm a little more moderate on AI, even though we're an AI company, but I don't want to try to claim it can do everything.
And Artur, I think you gave some really good examples of clear things that easily missed in the workflow in digital operations. How are you helping teams move broadly from insight to action, and what changes do you see occurring in teams that you're working with as a result of that?
Yeah, I guess I can give an example. There's a sports gear company we work with. They have 1.5 million SKUs. So if I give them, the broad order of magnitude we observe is 10%. So that would be 150,000 potential anomalies. If I just give them a list of these, it's impossible. Everybody has other priorities. We're all swamped with many things to do. So that's not actionable. So what we did with such a company, for example, is we identify the top 5% of bestsellers that had such anomalies, where fixing the anomaly would have the most impact. And so we focused on those highest value items. And then we generated correction for these items in the format that matches the PIM system of the company, so that it was ready for bulk upload. So in that case, we work with the merchandising team to prioritize items, generate AI recommendations on these items with issues, and then push it back to fix the most impactful alerts the fastest. And so for this example, it was about product category. They were listed in the wrong category, which is super important because if your products are not tagged properly, it's going to be much harder to find them. You're going to sell them less. And so in that case, it was a very streamlined process, way beyond just alerts, pinging, notification, and analytics. Went to resolution.
Great, thank you. And then RJ, your solution, it's agentic. It's helping people to execute their work, and insight to action becomes a little different. Number one, the tool's insights that it leverages to generate options or strategies, right? And then we went through the example of, hey, number two is the winner, but then with caveats, right? Because different segments, each of those options could be a winner depending on who your target segment is. How do you create those feedback loops back to the team? And how does that impact how they think about what is available for the tool? So as an example, how to give feedback on the types of creative, or are there even guidelines volumetrically on how much creative teams should be creating? So you have more assets to then synthesize, evaluate, and then deploy out of the digital asset management tool.
Yeah. We normally do a run of data every 10 cents for what it's worth. And customers are sending campaigns out, 4 or 5 times a week, typically, to their list, maybe more for some brands. And what we find is that there's this idea of like, we tested it once 6 months ago. And so that's the template we use. And when the email marketer steps into the seat, and those email marketers are stepping into seats every 13 or 14 months, they're like, oh, well, this is the template that we're using. So what Backstroke does is it reruns its algorithms to understand what template, what type of content, et cetera, comes back, and then we'll play that back to the customer. We have the ability to auto optimize campaigns, and we have reached that. We have 26 customers today. We've reached that with 5. But the big zinger here is that the creative team and the brand owner, or the team that's always done it a certain way, wants to weigh in and say, yes, I like that new template, or yes, I like the hero in this way, or yes, I like the content. So we still apply our humanness to it, sometimes too much, sometimes not enough. So I'm still saying that we're learning along with customers on how much they trust the machine. You don't want to bastardize your brand or your approach with just letting the machine run wild, but over editing or over optimizing with human opinion is also wrong. So we've adopted this 10 send mindset. Let's do 10 sends, refresh, 10 sends, refresh, and provide maybe things that align with what you already believe, as well as those that are maybe outliers, or maybe are like anathema within the brand. But let's just expose those in those 3 levels so that everybody can continue to drive performance as well as manage brand.
Yeah. And then, evolution of retail. So new theme, preparing for an AI-enabled future. What do things look like 5 or 10 years from now? And then leveraging your solutions, how are you helping organizations to evolve their thinking and approaches? I'm a big proponent of people, process, and technology, but the technology is improving in certain areas fairly rapidly, and that changes the dynamics of what those 3 things can accomplish together. Arthur, how are you helping your customers zero in on kind of the evolution, the change, and what can now be done that's valuable leveraging tools like yours?
Yeah, I wish I knew exactly what would happen in 10 years. That would be easier. I think everybody is.
There's stock tips for 10 years from now. Let me know.
Yeah. yeah. I think a lot of people have opinions about what it's going to look like in 10 years. I think the approach we're trying to take, and we see a few brands take, is being flexible, like knowing that we don't know for sure, and we try to focus on what's not going to change as opposed to what's going to change. And I think a metaphor we can take on this is the purchasing process is likely going to remain similar with a purchaser, decision levers, and some kind of information. Like in the day, you would maybe drive on your way to the mall, you would see billboards, and then you get into the mall, the clerk would answer some answers, and you would make the purchase or not. Then with Google, what happened is that Google was pushing those billboard equivalents on your page and pushing you to buy. And I think with the LLM or the AI tools, it's a bit similar, except that maybe instead of the information being pulled by you asking the clerk or searching, it's going to be pushed by you with maybe agentic commerce. So those levers, I think what we're always telling brands is encouraging brands to think about the current levers they have, which may be organic, which may be paid, which may be overall trust, and how they're going to prepare these levers from the current world to the agentic or AI world. And so we try to give them a few tips. And I think the easiest one is to start with having a strong foundational clean data hygiene. No matter which AI is going to win, OpenAI, Anthropic, Perplexity, the different options, data is going to be the fuel for it. So how do you get that data clean? How do you get the data available so that you show up high on the recommendation so that people buy from you and not from a reseller?
Yeah, the good news is if you're generatively optimized, your information will get to a lot of places. The bad news is if it's wrong, that wrong information will get to correspondingly a lot of places. It's a great point.
And a quick tip, an easy way to do this in 5 minutes for those that are in the audience is go into your LLM of choice you open a new window. Maybe you try the private mode, so you don't have any context of the past searches you've made, and you ask something about one of your products, and you ask for sources, and it doesn't really matter what the outcome is which sources the LLM picked, and that's probably a first place where you want to invest some content writing, where you want to become more reputable, because these are going to be the type of sources that are going to come up higher. And by the way, this is not super different than when Google is optimizing their algorithm. Every 3-6 months, they change something. Images are more important. These keywords are more important. It's just rules that get updated. It's a different engine, but similar rules.
Thank you. And then, Michael, from the work you're doing and kind of the broad purview you have in your space, what are you seeing as the biggest gaps of today? And if you play it forward, let's just take you out 5 years. What do you hypothesize kind of the biggest challenges are going to be in your space?
Well, I'll play forward 5 years and I'll play backwards 5 years. Like 5 years ago, the drive-by lawsuit of the day wasn't accessibility at all. It was mostly cookie policies and so on and so forth. Even today, we see accessibility from a legal perspective purely for e-commerce. Really, it's targeting a few types of tools and technologies, but for the general site, is probably waning. But we see a lot more privacy policy, drive-by suits or ambulance chasing. We see this new Texas SMS law that was just passed last week. We see this new law about strike-through pricing that's big in California. Also laws around law labels in Utah. So if you're a betting company, there's specific laws around that. So to Artur's point, which I think is actually, it's like a Jeff Bezos quote, when I'm looking at the next 10 years, I don't really think much about what's changing. I'm trying to figure out what's staying the same. And what's staying the same consistently is there's always laws that are changing. And there's always businesses that have to stay up to date with that, but they don't have the resources internally to do that. So when you think of TestParty in the grand scheme of where we're going in 5 years, that's the vision of how can we be the AI enabled or the layer that takes e-commerce difficulties of just running a business from a cost perspective, mainly a legal cost perspective, and how do we automate away some of that so that you can always know that you're in compliance or have proof of compliance. Accessibility is easy because we just go out and we find the 78 rules, we build tools around that, and we can fix your code base. Some of the other laws are just more difficult, but that's definitely, I think, the future of where we're going. I will say, just from a business perspective, I'm envious of RJ and Arthur because they're both doing like revenue generating businesses, whereas mine is purely cost cutting, right? It's purely, let's get you to avoid having these suits. Let's get you to make sure you're not, we try to argue for a revenue generating story, improves SEO for accessibility or improves GEO. But certainly, you're always going to need to cut costs, and costs are always going to go up, and people are always going to try and find a way to hurt your business when you're just trying to grow an e-commerce business. And that's always the debate that we're trying to have. But that's where I see 5 years in the future what we'll focus on primarily.
Thank you. And then RJ, I mean, you're for a lot of these teams probably one of the first solutions that is agentically enabling the marketing team in day-to-day activities. What are the stresses and changes on ways of working and structure and priorities that you see being immediately affected today, but you think are going to be fundamentally changing over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think that immediately it's a matter of authority. Who approves this is the question that we hear a lot. It used to be the approval flow was this person and that person and this person, like the copywriter, then the creative, then the email marketer, then the manager or something. But if all three of those people aren't involved in generating a message, or then who approves it? Is the manager now responsible for reading every word? Because the copywriter used to do that and then kind of give their check off. There's like elaborate QA processes that are currently in place. So that's a big shift right now. And then Backstroke generates variants of content. Right now, our most sophisticated customer generates 20 variants of a campaign because they can human QA 20 variants of a campaign. But Backstroke can generate hundreds or thousands of variants of a campaign down to the one-to-one. So do we trust the agentic QA or not? And what happens when something slips through? If it's, like they're, it's just going to, right? And something slips through on the human side and we are okay to say oops and send an oops email. Or we see people tell stories on social media about how the intern didn't get fired or whatever. But I don't think that grace is there yet for agentic. So everyone's being really nervous, like I don't want to go beyond the human QA front. So I think that's the biggest thing. And that's a lot of change management.
Yeah. That's a great segue into kind of topic 3, which is change management. When I talk to a lot of executives who are really bullish about AI, but probably not that knowledgeable about AI, they just view it as something magical that's going to solve their fundamental problems. And technology is an amazing enabler, but this kind of radical change, if you're going to adopt radical changes in people, process, and technology, those become massive change management exercises. And so, how, starting with RJ, thinking about change management, how do the teams that you're working with, how do they think about the changes in email? You're in email and SMS, email in particular, less revenue attachment over the past few years, pretty precipitous decline. SMS has closed a lot of that, but also SMS is losing some altitude, and you've got a solution that makes it smarter and more effective, but the needle, keeps getting, the ability to thread the needle keeps getting tighter and tighter and tighter. There's more and more restrictions and difficulties in getting those eyeballs. And in SMS, Michael, you pointed out, right, there's a lot of legal restrictions on SMS. How do you think about having the team focused on how to drive effectiveness in these more narrow windows while changing the dynamics of people, process, and technology? And how do you help to drive your client teams forward in that?
Yeah, we've at Backstroke, we have created a pretty extensive calculator that helps marketers with understanding it. And what we find is that if you ask an email marketer, how long does it take you to create an email? They'll probably say like, oh, it's like an hour, something like that. But if you actually go through all the steps, they go to the content meeting, then the copywriter, then the brand, then they approve, then they go back and forth, it's like 7 hours, and that's literally what it is. With Backstroke, you can brief and generate a campaign in 5 minutes, literally start to finish. So there's inherent distrust when you say, wait, I'm going from 7 hours to 5 minutes. Yes, is the short answer. And it's like almost unbelievable, but it's true. So what do we do with that day of time that I just added there? Marketers can be more creative. They can do all the what if projects instead of like being obsessed with all the steps that we used to go to. So, and the management team and or the leaders have to incentivize that work and make it not like, hey, go automate your job so then you're done and we'll fire you. Instead, go automate your job so you can go do those creative things that you alone can do for our human brand. And, my 5-year vision is that like, it's already true. Everybody's effectively sending similar templates, similar designs. We've scanned them, 15,000 different brands. It looks kind of the same. So what's the differentiator is brand. And so you can use AI. Like that's the hook. Here's the calculator. Here's the time you're going to save. Here are the creative things that you can do with your time instead of, dragging and dropping or doing another WYSIWYG workflow tool, which I think is really exciting. And creativity is the future.
Awesome, thank you. And Arthur, you're catching thousands, maybe even millions of errors across a litany of sites. What are you seeing the impact of AI generated content, assets, text, product descriptions? What are you seeing as kind of the key risks and what's going wrong when those things go awry?
I think it's the equation is becoming imbalanced. We enjoy so much creating, and we tend to go towards creating with AI more than validating with AI, that we inflate the content that we're creating, that there's so much more content that it gets created. There's the one-on-one, one-to-one personalization, for example, where everybody would get their own images and contents. And so if you're using technology to create content, but you're still relying on manual process to review it, you can't follow, you cannot track. And so that means the consequences that we looked at before, which is errors, customers frustrated, and so on. One quote that I enjoy, it's not from me, but it's someone saying like, I don't want AI to do, the poetry, the drawing, the creativity for me, so I have more time to do the dishes and the laundry. I want AI to do the dishes and the laundry so I can focus on the creativity, the drawing, and so on. And it's a bit of a principle we took when we started working at Zenyt, which is what we're trying to do with Zenyt is we're trying to help e-commerce merchandising team go faster and get rid of what's often the most annoying part of their job. That's what they complain the most about, which is spending 10 hours looking at your screen, reading every line, reading every details, to try to find something that is quite hard. So that's been the approach. And what we always recommend to folks is try. With AI, there's so many new solutions, so many new things. As long as we have a framework for trying, which is the 3 R's, which is repetition, rules, and revenue impact. Repetition is if it's something you're doing frequently, if it's something that follows some kind of clear rule with a yes or no answer, if there's something broken on my PDP, does it look good on mobile? Is there a typo in my text? And then revenue, which is does it have an impact? You can ask yourself if you have the 3 R's, then you at least should give it a try and see what comes out.
And Michael, what safeguards do you recommend around AI content and AI supported creative processes?
Yeah, I mean, definitely for safeguards, there's a lot of open source tools for scanning. Second, TestParty. No, I'm kidding. Or am I? But third, one thing that we actually, when we first built the business, and we were selling into Fortune 1000, our hypothesis was let's give teams the tools, and they'll just use the tools, and everything will be awesome. Unfortunately, I think RJ kind of touched on this, and it was in your first question. Like changing people's habits is the hardest thing, right? Like you can have the best solution, but if it doesn't fit into how I live my life, I'm never going to use it. And so I think that's one thing around accessibility is we don't expect everyone to become an accessibility expert, even though I would love that. I'm sure a lot of people with disabilities who can't navigate the web would love that, but it's just not a realistic expectation. And so really are you at least doing what you think is the best for the baseline? Do you have, as a business, processes and systems in place? Because you fall to you may have all these dreams and goals, but you fall to whatever your systems are built up to be. So whether that system is something open source, whether that system is a vendor for accessibility and beyond, for these sort of cost savings businesses, I think it's super critical.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate everyone sharing their solutions and perspectives. Also wanted to thank the audience for also submitting their questions. Okay, Alexa, over to you.
All right. Thank you all so much to our speakers and to Noam for an insightful panel discussion and for a lively Startup Spotlight webinar. I have 3 key takeaways to wrap us up today. Our commerce next steps are: firstly, AI is moving from detection to action. AI is no longer just spotting problems, it's fixing them and helping companies move from auditing and insights into resolution. Our second takeaway is innovation requires collaboration between startups and brands. Success comes from pairing entrepreneurial speed with brand expertise, turning experimentation into scalable strategies. And lastly, change management is key to unlocking AI's potential. Adopting AI is as much about people and process as it is about tech. We heard about the importance of future-proofing through strong data hygiene, adapting team structures, and rethinking how e-commerce, merchandising, and marketing functions operate. That's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.